evening, viewers, and welcome to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is a show that talks about everything current law of personal injuries and obviously of importance to you, the viewer. My name's Tony Carbone. I'm a personal injury lawyer, 30 years experience. With me today, I've got Nunzio Tartaglia, a partner in a law firm in insurance law. Good evening, Nunz.
Evening, Tony. Evening, viewers. Welcome.
And Jessica Rosla, a lawyer in a law firm in insurance law. Good evening, Jess.
Evening, Tony. Evening, viewers.
Tonight, viewers, we're going to be doing a segment on product liability and compensation, so stay tuned for that.
Before we kick off though, Tony, what's in the news this week?
Viewers, there's been a lot of stories in the news, but the sensational story, Nunz, is on about the Bacchus Marsh Hospital and the incompetency of the staff, the lack of training and use of machinery and things like that, Jess.
Yeah.
And Nunz, tell us a bit more about it.
Well, effectively, it's been uncovered or discovered that effectively there's been, I think, 11 deaths of babies at the Bacchus Marsh Hospital. And what's worse, though, is that they'll sort of put on notice about it I think it was sometime last year where at that time there was about 8 deaths and saying that, you know, we're worried about your practices, and midwives at the hospital were worried, and still nothing happened, it was ignored. And now it's been finally uncovered and, you know, serious ramifications.
Yeah.
Jess, don't you find it extraordinary that you've got a hospital that's got all this equipment and sophisticated machinery and people just don't know how to use them?
Yeah, certainly that's very alarming, Tony. And as Nunzio mentioned, the deaths, I think the findings of the investigations with that, they could have been avoided if there were proper practices that were followed up, Tony. So it's really devastating for the families that have lost these babies to...
Yeah, and the key obstetrician or the head of there at the time is flown off to India, so he's nowhere to be found as well. So
he's done a runner.
Yeah, I just can't believe it got to that point though. Like you would have thought that you know, that many deaths, that alarm bells are ringing, and you know, let's do something about this.
I guess what's tragic from my point of view is the fact that you're dealing with young, you know, babies and infants.
And it's such an exciting time in your life.
Yeah, it's just
tragic
extraordinary,
consequences.
Anyway. Shooting victims in the US, Jess, are getting settlements. There's been something like 750 shootings involving police, and in quite a few instances, people have taken video footage of what's happened, and in some cases, the police have actually been charged with murder.
Yeah, that's right, Tony. It is really alarming, the number of shootings that have been reported in the US. And as you said, it seems like the ones that were recorded kind of demonstrated that it was a disproportionate reaction, and that thankfully it's resulted in compensation, but I guess for whatever that's worth for the family's comfort.
Nunz, in a lot of these cases, it's the damning video footage taken by third parties and bystanders. Yeah. If it wasn't for that, you know...
Oh, look, then you've got, you know, sort of he said, she said situation. Oh, well, only one person's really to say. So it's amazing how, you know, people are capturing it. And look, I'm glad they do, because if, you know, unarmed people getting shot is just not something that you can tolerate. Especially, I think this situation where the gentleman or the family received 6.5 million in compensation. He was unarmed, I think, fleeing a traffic stop or something.
Running away.
But, you know, it's not great, but at the same time, he hasn't killed anyone, so it doesn't deserve to be shot on the street.
But having said that, there's a lot of instances where the police have been shot at, because don't forget, in the States, everyone carries guns.
A gun. Yeah.
You know, the other day, I think Hillary Clinton tried to make a statement about buying back guns, and everyone booed her, and, you know, she was really torn apart.
Yeah.
But it's just bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big issue over there in the States. I think they've been under fire a lot over the last 12 months or so.
Yeah, they have.
That topic.
Well, on this issue of guns and police, what about this one of the Victorian policeman that's under investigation at the moment? In fact, he's been charged. Tell us a bit
look, he's been charged with murder, and look, it's been discovered he's got a history of sort of psychiatric illness and depression and the like, and it sort of raised the concern or the issue about, you know, these police officers are holding, you know, firearms, and in light of their mental condition, are they safe to do so? And, you know, as we know, there's sort of depression and psychiatric injuries, unfortunately, are pretty rife throughout the Victorian police, and, you know, are we sort of creating a bit of a danger there?
Jess, is there some sort of breakdown in the system in the police force where you've got people with mental health issues and they're carrying guns like Nunzio says? Yeah,
I mean, look, I guess when you hear about the stories, that is your first thought, Tony. And there was another incident of a police member who committed suicide with a background of mental illness using his own firearm. So certainly the public statement is that these officers have been reviewed by Victoria Police psychiatrists to clear them, if you like. But the fact that this is still continuing is really alarming.
And the sad thing about this case is that he's been charged, and he's got mental health issues, does that raise issues about whether, I don't know, would he be guilty in those circumstances?
Well, that'll have to be a sort of mitigating circumstance, but I think it comes down to, they've got to be a bit more across, the mental state of their own employees and seeing whether they're safe to hold firearms and also be, active police officers.
Yeah.
And in a current environment where there's a lot of more drug addicts and ice addicts around, it means that...
the risk is greater, I guess.
I think so.
Yeah, the pressures are higher.
Jess, fiance still angry over the fatal quad bike accident.
Yeah, Tony, it's a really sad story, actually. The fiance of a former British soldier was here on a working visa and was unfortunately involved in a fatal accident where a quad bike had knocked him over while he was undertaking work on this farm. It turns out that the employer had pleaded guilty to a number of unsafe work practices, but it doesn't appear that they've been able to draw the line between the cause of the accident to the unsafe work practices. So in that regard, there's been a lack of closure on the part of the fiance.
Well, what's happened, Nunzio, is that the magistrate fined the company $40,000 without conviction.
Yep.
And, the fiance said, well, my partner's not coming back, it's ruined my life. So
That's right. Yeah, she doesn't
Yeah.
feel that justice has been done and that, she believes that those, I suppose, work safe breaches or is the cause of the death and really hasn't been found in that regard because I think they were saying that one, they allowed employees to drive quad bikes with defective brakes and also without helmets. But they haven't, the court or the magistrate didn't make the next step of saying, well, this is the seriousness of it. So, look, $40,000 fine without conviction.
No, it sounds like pretty light,
It's
really.
pretty light, isn't it? So.
Yeah, it is. Well, it doesn't hang over their head, does it?
No, but look, she does have a case though, Tony, doesn't she?
Well, in this case, she should have one for psychological injuries. Nervous shock?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's under the Wrongs Act, Jess?
Yep.
Look, there's a couple of stories I want to do, but we might do it in the next segment under product liability.
Yep.
So we might just go to a sponsors break, and after the break, we'll talk about these couple of stories and take it from there. So if you'll stay tuned after the break, we'll take up the issue of product liability and compensation. Welcome back to the show. As I said before the break, we're going to be talking about faulty products and devices, that is product liability and compensation. What we're really looking at is when you purchase something that is defective, what can you do? Can you claim? Can you be compensated for your losses? Now, Jess, under the Australian consumer law, we've got what they call consumer guarantees. What's that all about?
Pretty much it means that when you purchase a product that's either to the value of $40,000 or if it's above $40,000 that it's for your personal or domestic use, that there's certain guarantees that a manufacturer owes to you, which pretty much means that the goods need to be in proper working order, that they're fit for their purpose, safe for use, and that they match their description.
Now, Nunzio, under Section 54(2) of the Commonwealth legislation, Australian consumer law legislation, they talk about acceptable quality. What does that mean?
Well, there's a sort of 5-step definition to it, and I'll go through it. So it's one is fit for all purposes for which goods of that kind are supplied, acceptable in appearance and finish, free from defects, safe and durable. So that's the 5 facets that make up what's called acceptable quality. It used to be merchantable quality, but they just changed the definition.
Okay. So. Now, Jess, when does a product have a safety defect? I know it's a loaded question, it's a pretty general question, but in simple terms for the public.
It's interesting, Tony, that the definition in accordance with the Act is that it's an objective test, but it's also what a community would expect the product to be in terms of its safety level. So whilst it's objective, it also factors in what you would normally expect from a product of that nature.
And Nunz, who are the people that could be liable when supplying the product?
Well, generally, Tony, it's the manufacturers who are liable, and then you've got also sometimes what's called deemed suppliers, who if they've
retailers.
the retailers if they come from overseas and supplied by someone in Australia. And there's new, I suppose, laws within the new Act which actually, if you put a supplier on notice that you want the details of manufacturing, they don't respond within 30 days, they can be deemed to be liable. So there's a bit more protection afforded to consumers now, which is a good part of the Act.
No, that's good. Yeah. That is good. Now, when seeking compensation, Jess, for loss and damage, who are the people that can claim?
So effectively, Tony, if you've suffered either property damage or personal injury, or someone else has suffered it as a result of the product, then you can bring a claim for compensation for that loss.
Nonce. Limitation periods, they're pretty strict, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. So it's sort of similar to that of under the Wrongs Act, where you've got really 3 years or from date of discoverability, and then you've got a sort of long stop period of 12 years, but then it's also going to be 10 years in which the good was supplied. And they're effectively, pretty stringent limitation periods. And Jess, I want to tell the viewers about what the compensation packages are like in terms of, because they are different to the Wrongs Act, probably not as lucrative.
Yeah, that's right.
And probably more difficult to ascertain.
Yeah, so in order to claim personal injury damages as opposed to property damage from the defective product, you need to establish that you've suffered at least 15% of what the Act refers to as the most extreme case. A most extreme case, the definition of that is such as a quadriplegic has full insight into their knowledge, Tony. So in terms of the damages available, 15% of the most extreme case entitles you to 1% of the statutory maximum.
Which is not much.
Which isn't a lot when you compare the state jurisdictions.
And what's the maximum?
The maximum is, at this point in time, it's about 328,000.
Geez, that's not much at all, is it?
No, it's not much, and it's like whereas the Wrongs Act, you've got over 5%, and then you can get money for pain and suffering. Even a sort of soft tissue injury, you're not going to get much money there.
So you're better off to really try and go under state law in Victoria, that is.
Yeah.
If that's not going to work, then
probably a little bit more lucrative, like the Fair Trading Act and the Sale of
you're
Goods
entitled
Act.
to go under both acts. There's authority to say that and to choose the one that's more favourable. But certainly there'd be circumstances where you'd be restricted, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, you've got to be careful because if you do plead the Commonwealth legislation, then you're really bound by that because takes precedence over state law. So you've got to be really careful what course of action you take. Why don't we have a look at some case examples? Irwin and Iveco Trucks, 2010 New South Wales decision. Can you give us the background of this, Nunz, the facts?
Yeah, this is effectively a motor car or vehicle accident surrounding a truck and a car in which, it's alleged that obviously the steering failed on this truck and he veered to the other side of the road and injured the plaintiff in these circumstances. And the case was brought against Irwin, who was the truck driver, and he's then cross-claimed or drawn as a third party to that of Iveco, who's the manufacturer of the truck. And eventually it did go to an appeal. I think it was in the New South Wales Court of Appeal, and actually it's quite strong authority on.
Well, what happened in the first instance? Jess, do you want to tell us?
So effectively, at first instance, Tony, they looked at the level of maintenance that the truck driver took on the truck. And it was quite interesting because he openly admitted that he pretty much undertook maintenance of every aspect of the truck except for the steering mechanism. So ultimately, when they were looking at what Iveco could have done and compared the evidence with all their other vehicles, they found that there were no issues with the steering mechanisms. So in that regard, they said that Iveco really couldn't be liable for that and the truck driver should be.
Well, this accident happened a long time after the truck was put into operation.
Yeah, so it was 13 years after I think it was manufactured or sold. So it was a long time down the track, and I think 450,000 vehicles being made, 2 million kilometres had been clocked up. So
that's a lot of kilometres.
And the court was, inferring that you can't be responsible for everything, considering a vehicle is so old and so far down the track.
So in the end, the manufacturer was let off the hook.
Yep.
And the owner of the truck was responsible for not maintaining the steering system.
Yeah, so Irwin was responsible for that in he's failed to maintain and get the proper services and checks and balances done, and then he also attempted to appeal it and also failed at that instance as well. So it was a pretty strong authority to say Iveco had no part to play in it.
Yeah.
What I find extraordinary is that this the owner of the truck, it had the truck serviced, the engine rebuilt, everything, and he's trying to blame it back on the manufacturer. That's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
But look, I don't know. I would have thought though also these whoever was inspecting his vehicles or doing the relevant services. I would have thought they probably had a part to play in it, because if you're taking your car to a competent service provider to check up on your vehicle, I would have thought they should probably look at the steering.
Look into
that's
that.
probably what I would have alluded to.
Yeah.
Just on that issue there, the family of Walker,
Paul
Walker, they're trying to sue Porsche for product liability. What's happening?
Yeah, so Paul Walker, obviously was unfortunately killed in a car accident, and obviously he's a famous celebrity from the Fast and Furious franchise, and he passed away, and his sister's now issued a case against Porsche for effectively a defective product, because that's what's caused the accident.
I'll stop you there, Nunzio. We're going to go to a sponsors break, viewers. After the break, we'll take up this case of Paul Walker and the Fast and Furious team. Viewers, welcome back to the show. Before the break, we're talking about Paul Walker and his untimely death behind the wheel of a Porsche. Actually, no, he was a passenger, wasn't he, Nunzio?
Yeah.
And it was the
So his daughters filed a lawsuit against Porsche
for a defective product.
Look, she has, and look, I don't know much about the case in terms of its detail, but I would have thought she's going to fight an uphill battle, considering I think the driver's been found to be driving at excessive speeds, and I think it was 160 odd
Why didn't
kilometres.
she bring the case against the driver?
Insurance? No, not from what I'm aware of. Maybe there's lack of insurance, and I'm not sure why, but I would have thought she's going to struggle to win this one.
Jess, they brought this case against the Porsche company. You would have thought the best claim would have been against the driver, but it sounds like it's not compulsory insurance in Los Angeles.
Yes, that certainly might be a factor, Tony, or otherwise, I mean, depending on the circumstances, if he was convicted for the act, then the insurance policy may not respond in that circumstance.
Yeah,
so that
possible.
might be a reason.
Anyway, look, we'll get some more information.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll hear more about that.
This is another interesting case. McDermott and others and Robinson Helicopter Company, 2014 Queensland case. Nunzio, do you want to give me a bit of a background on this?
Yeah, so this is an accident that occurred in May 2004, and a helicopter crashed with obviously the pilot and one passenger. And similar to the case that we discussed in the previous segment, again, like a drive mechanism failed as well in this helicopter, and obviously proceedings were issued, and this also went to the Court of Appeal in Queensland.
Well, just before we get on to what happened there, the pilot was killed.
Yep.
And the passenger survivor was very badly burned.
Yep.
Now, at the trial, there was all this talk about the mechanism of, and how it failed and all the talks and this and that. Try and give it to us in as simple language as you can, please, Jess.
Yeah. So effectively, Tony, at first instance, the trial division of the Queensland Court found that because the maintenance was effectively complied with the manufacturer's manual, that the manufacturer wasn't at fault in this event. So they said that they maintained the mechanism of the helicopter every 100 flying hours or every calendar month, which is what was required. So in that regard, there was nothing further that they could have done to prevent it. Interestingly though, on appeal, Tony, the court looked at the updated manual, and they found that there were certain elements that sent a message to users of the helicopter that if it had been complied with at the time, would have put the, users on notice that there was something wrong with the helicopter and that the accident could have been totally avoided. So they went a little bit further than the trial court did, and they really analysed the changes to the manufacturer's manual in that regard.
Okay. And what happened? What was the result?
So ultimately, the plaintiff was successful, and there was a few parties to this proceeding, but they were successful on appeal. And the stranger on here, I think them changing the manual following the incident.
Bizarre.
I hate to say, but I think that almost put him in the gun, Tony.
Well, leaving aside the fact about compensation, if they've done that, would you think that there was a basis for criminal charges there or what?
Oh, look, I suppose you've got to go to the next
You're talking
extension.
about
Would
people's
say
lives.
yeah, look,
Yeah,
arguably it could, but look, it sounds like this was something that, you know, would have reached a criminal threshold. I'd probably say no, and in this instance, it's obviously that's found. But you know, the strange decision to, you know, to feel that you had to change your man. Then you would have settled the case in otherwise, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. But why
Yeah.
would you upgrade the manual at this point in time?
Afterwards, yeah.
What are they? All of a sudden, they developed a conscience. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be good to know what triggered that. But certainly, the changes were very specific, and there was something in the wording of, you know, a change from the word should to must.
Okay.
So those kind of elements, I think the court really honed in on and said, well, they were aware that if they had made these changes, it could have potentially avoided the outcome.
But the manuals aren't just best practice, aren't they? It's not a case of let's just do it at the 100-hour mark. There's circumstances where you should do it after 10 hours, isn't it?
That's right. I think it's sort of case by case in that regard. But this is very similar to the last case we discussed, and you know, I'm struggling to see the difference. Maybe because it was 13 years down the track.
13 years down the track. I mean, not only 13 years down the track, but he'd done what was
2 million,
2 million kilometres.
Yeah.
Geez, I don't think I've driven 2 million
remote.
kilometres in my whole life.
Yeah.
And this guy's done 2 million in a truck. It's just bizarre. And the damages, they wouldn't have been very high, I wouldn't have thought, under that.
Well, it was remitted. We don't know what the outcome is. But it was remitted back for assessment for quantum, effectively, or damages. And you know, look, it was great for the plaintiff that he was successful, and they were successful. And you know, not sure what the financial outcome was there.
Well, Jess and Nunz, this highlights the difficulties of the system and the intricacies of the legislation that is at a federal and state level. So, no circumstance in the Wiki Carbone, you head up the insurance department.
Look, this is definitely a jurisdiction, an area where you do need legal advice, because you said you've got so many different acts at play, both, as you said, federally and locally in terms of the state. So in terms of then working out the damages, like Jess was explaining before, it's complicated, it's convoluted, and you know, it's not easy for a layperson. So you definitely need a lawyer to help out.
And also, Jess, it's important to get a lawyer involved early.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've got to satisfy certain steps.
Yeah.
And if you
also
wait too long...
Yeah, and also the time limitation is a factor, Tony, which is always very difficult to overcome if you see a lawyer too late in the piece.
Of course, of course. Okay, well, look, those cases involve mechanical defects on trucks and cars and planes.
Helicopters, yeah.
Let's talk about a coconut milk tragedy. Jess, a 10-year-old Melbourne boy died from an allergic reaction to an imported natural coconut drink that also contained unlabelled cow's milk.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about the facts of this case.
Yeah, Tony, this is really tragic. The poor boy who cannot be named as he was a minor at the time, unfortunately had an anaphylactic reaction to this imported coconut drink, and the parents, you know, did their due diligence and checked the packaging and checked if there were any traces of dairy, and it didn't appear to be so. So, as any parent would, allowed their child to drink the coconut water, and he unfortunately had a fatal reaction to it.
And Nunz, the family have brought a claim for obviously nervous shock.
Yeah, they have, and also it's interesting to note that this manufacturer of the good or the coconut product pleaded guilty to, I suppose, mislabelling charges, not to the actual circumstances, but mislabelling charges. So you would have thought the case has got some fairly strong merit, and I think ever since then there's been a lot of products being recalled. So it's clearly it's a common occurrence, and I think something needs to be done to make sure it doesn't happen.
That's a very important point, Nunz. I mean, viewers, you've got to be very, very concerned about these products, because it's subsequent to this death, it's been found that quite a few products that aren't supposed to have cow's milk in there have in fact got cow's milk in there.
Yeah, and they're not labelling properly. You're allowed to have it in there, but make sure it's labelled properly so you're aware of what you're consuming, and that's not being done properly. And it's, you know, I hate to say,
it's a real problem,
more of this might happen. So.
Yeah.
Well, we've come to the end of the show. Jess, thanks for coming on board.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Jess.
Viewers, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for future episodes. Go to our past episodes on YouTube. Go to our social media platforms, and always remember to stay safe.